Commonly referred to as the Eiffel Tower of the Pacific, the Space Needle is the towering icon of Seattle, Washington. High above the skyline at an astounding 605 feet tall, it's a sight few can forget after seeing. However, this landmark is not just pretty to look at. It's a functioning, rotating restaurant accessed by 2 elevators that take just 43 seconds to travel up and down the narrower part of the structure. The Space Needle stands at 605 feet tall, dominating the low altitudes of the buildings around it. At 183 feet wide at the top, you, as well as most of its visitors, would marvel at the sheer impossibility of its design. However, the structure was achieved with no more than a knowledge of practical geometry, many prototypes, and hard work from those who helped construct it. Before any construction could begin, land had to be purchased that could fit the fairgrounds. A 120 by 120 foot block of land in Seattle that had held police and fire alarm systems was chosen and sold to investors for $75,000. The building began with Edward E. Carlson, the president of Western International Hotels, and his idea of a giant balloon tethered to the ground as the centerpiece of the 1962 World's Fair in Seattle. Excited about his German Stuttgart Tower-inspired idea, he sketched the building on a placemat of a coffee house. The idea was further developed by John Graham, an architect, who proposed a flying saucer-like top to fit the Century 21 feel of the World's Fair. The issue of stability was an important one in the building of this landmark in the making. The Seattle area is prone to earthquakes, and though they are not as severe as those in San Francisco, the building needed to withstand these earthquakes. To ensure this, a 30-foot deep and 120-foot across hole was dug and filled with cement. It took an entire day and 467 cement chunks to fill the hole. This 6,000-ton base, with 250 tons of reinforcing steel, would prevent the structure from toppling over in winds up to 200 miles per hour, and earthquakes with as much as 9.5 magnitudes. The needle itself weighs the same as its base, making the center of gravity just 5 feet above ground level. Another precaution: the needle is bolted down to its foundation with an astounding 72 bolts, each one measuring 30 feet long. Construction began in 1961 by the Pentagon Corporation. This corporation consisted of Bagley Wright, contractor Howard S. Wright, architect John Graham, Ned Skinner, and Norton Clapp. This construction was under a tight and excruciating schedule. The ambiguous project was astoundingly completed in just under a year. A knowledge of triangles was also a part of the success of the project. Notice how the structure has a multitude of isosceles triangles. These are placed in such a way that they evenly distribute the weight of the dome above. The steel sides that form these triangles mimic the position of the ropes that tether giant balloons to the ground. I guess Edward E. Carlson really did know his stuff. Unfortunately, where there is a sturdy and architecturally secure tower, there is bound to be tragedy. 3 people have jumped off the observation deck and committed suicide since its construction. A carillon, which is a bell tone creator, was installed during the World's Fair. It recreates the tones of 538 bells and is used on such sad occasions. For years, the original Pentagon Corporation owned the Space Needle. However, in 1977, Bagley, Skinner, and Clapp sold their interest to Howard Wright, who now controls it under the name of the Space Needle Corporation. Although some would say that despite the ownership papers, the Space Needle belongs to Seattle and everyone who visits there, it has become more than a building. The Space Needle is Seattle. A light was added to the top of the dome, but is usually lit for little more than 12 days a year because of light pollution. The Space Needle is now Seattle's main tourist attraction. Its 5 levels of restaurants, observation decks, and gift shops attracted more than 20,000 visitors a day, or 2.3 million visitors in 1962, and the numbers are still comparable today. It's no wonder. The Space Needle was the tallest building west of the Mississippi River when it was built, and it continues to be the symbol of Seattle, Washington today.